So, Hitman is the story of Gary Johnson, played by Glenn Powell. Your average all-American college professor. But he also moonlights as a hitman for his local police department. Originally, Gary had a hobby working in audio and playing around with microphones. Kind of a niche man, and he jumped into working with the local police. One day, he gets pulled into just kind of stepping in for the cop they were gonna use. He kind of dresses up and fixes up his hair, and it turns out he's actually pretty good at it. So he gets a gig regularly catching criminals as a hitman who are trying to hire somebody to off their husband or wife or business partner or whatever. Gary shows up in costume with an accent, Glenn Powell putting it on, and he starts to answer the problem right up until they hand him some money, and then the cops show up and arrest him, and we're on to the next case. Brilliant opportunity for Glenn Powell to display a multitude of quick and quirky characters through Gary Johnson's Hitman character, right up until he meets Madison. Played by Adria Arjona, I think is how you say
Arjona.
It. Is it really Arjona? That's the pronunciation. Arjona. Adria Arjona.
Arjona. I know.
Yes. Who is hiring Gary to take out somebody in her life, and he realizes that she isn't really the same as all the others, that she's different, that she's softer, that she's kind. So he kind of convinces her to maybe go a different way, and while evading his local police department, who of course wants to catch as many suspects as they can, he begins to court our Madison. It's a rom-com. It's like 90 minutes. It's pretty tidy, and let me tell you, it's unconventional, I think, in the way Richard Linklater likes, and it may not be for everyone, but we're not doing spoilers on this show. I do want to talk about it. Andy, what did you think of Hitman?
So I wanted to start out with saying that this movie, I think, was totally astroturfed on Twitter. I was seeing all kinds of buzz like, oh, this movie's so great. It's so awesome. Glenn Powell's incredible. He deserves it. Like, there was Oscar talk for Glenn Powell, and all these clips of Adria Arjona kind of just being super hot, and just a ton of really positive buzz. And then it all kind of disappeared after the weekend that it came out. But I do not know what people are talking about, because this movie is not really what it is. Looks like it's advertised. Like, it looks like we're gonna get Glenn Powell doing like 15 different personalities, like, because he's going undercover as a hitman, but he feels like he has to kind of be different every time. And like, one of the posters is him in like 10-12 different costumes and like makeup and different looks. He does like 4 or 5, and they all just look like Glenn Powell with glasses on, or Glenn Powell and a hat. There's a couple that are a little bit different. There's one where he's just channeling other people. There's one where he does the Christian Bale American Psycho thing, which it's almost like that bit is for the internet, because I saw it posted a lot. And then also there's one where he's definitely channeling Tilda Swinton, and it's kind of fun, but he only does a few of them, and also the narratively it's just real messy. It's one movie for the first act, and then it turns into a weird rom-com in acts 2 and 3, and it doesn't really know where, and it's not really based on a story, it's based on a person. I listened to an interview with Richard Linklater where he had known this person, Gary Johnson, who was a college professor and knew a lot about hitmen, in that they largely don't exist. They're a fiction of Hollywood, this idea that there's like highly paid people that go around assassinating whoever for large sums of money. Hitmen really only exist in 2 crass forms. One is like government agents, like CIA type guys, or like a gangster kind of enforcer, which is usually not getting paid very much, if anything, to do a hit. So it's not a real thing, but that's kind of, Gary uses this to his advantage to sell that image to people, because he's trying to get people to confess. That's an interesting premise, and I wish that would have been what the whole movie was about. But then it turns into a weird rom-com halfway through, that there is, I was hearing all this stuff about, they have so much chemistry. And it's like, they have like no chemistry. You're never convinced by it at all. I'm never convinced that Gary is like, he's supposed to be this big nerd, and I was like, it's Glenn Powell wearing glasses. Like, It's the she's all that thing. It's like, oh no, her ponytail went down. She's beautiful now.
Yeah, I think like Richard Linklater's Hitman is one of two things. I think it is either a really clever read at like the value of identity to yourself and to others through the lens of Gary Johnson, somebody that Linklater knew and identified with, like somebody who seemed to understand people and be able to approach them in a multitude of different ways. This character that Glenn Powell helped write with Linklater, helped pen the script, like obviously is able to step into a lot of different roles and shapes and silhouettes. And like, that's thoughtful. And that even extends to these characters, Gary and Madison. Like the two of them are multifaceted in a way. And I think the way that their relationship goes is surprising to the viewers who may be expecting something a little bit more standard. And I think in that way, maybe Richard Linklater's Hitman is that. But on the other hand, I think Richard Linklater's Hitman might be clumsy and may not have stern direction and may lack like specific tone, especially in its second and third act. First act's great. Glenn Powell is a ton of fun. He dresses up as like 10 different people. You're right. They're all little clips, right? Each one's going to make a great TikTok. They're on the posters. That's super fun. And Powell, I should say, puts the movie on his back. If it was not him, it would not work nearly as well.
Yeah.
Like he clearly cared about it. Yes. Again, help pen the script. This is something that's really important to him. Powell rocks. No complaints about Powell. But like following that, I do not understand some of the decisions that happen in this script. And then getting to the end of the film and seeing the like, you know, during the credits, like this was based on a real person and pictures and stuff. Like it leaves an unsatisfying, I think, taste in my mouth. Like I didn't really enjoy the end of it. And it's like, that's kind of a bummer because I think it starts strong. It just doesn't get there. So,
well, especially, I mean, Richard Linklater has such an incredible filmography. He's done Boyhood, A Scanner Darkly, the Before series, trilogy, I believe. I mean, he's like an institution of modern cinema, and to see him reduced to Netflix, you know, like their model, which we see this all the time. They spend a lot of money on stars and directors, like they get the names and then they take shortcuts everywhere else. The script, the production, some of this looks really cheap. You can tell they're on set places and not on location. A lot of it is inside. There's not a lot of like action sequences. Like it's like, oh, this is where you're cutting corners so you could pay Glenn Powell to be in this. And it's frustrating because there is an opportunity. Like imagine if you actually gave him like 6 or 7 characters that were really different, that he really had to dive into as an actor to really be different. Accent, look, like, because most of them are just like, well, they're dudes. They're just different dude bro variations that he can do, and he can kind of change his voice. Somebody just kind of put on glasses and a hat, and he's like slightly different. But like the premise is great, but just where it goes is just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, like all the different personalities are almost like just for marketing, and they just picked them up in reshoots because each one's only in the film for a couple of minutes, and without them, you got another 98 minutes of film left that isn't really filled by anything certifiable. But I do want to say something that I think is important in here. It's something that is valuable. Is like the art of like double talk. That's a big part of Hitman. Like having a conversation. Glenn Powell's Gary Johnson will be in character as, let's say, Ron, who is kind of his primary identity. That's who he courts Madison through. This kind of rough and tumble, no nonsense guy, very confident, slick back hair. It basically looks just how Glenn Powell looks all the time, right? That's probably the most Glenn Powell-esque character. He is talking to a suspect, and the suspect will be talking to him not knowing that he's a cop wearing a wire, right? Or representing the police wearing a wire. So often Gary will have to speak as Ron to the suspect, knowing that the people in the truck outside can hear him and are waiting to hear the evidence for them to come in and crash the doors and get the suspect, while also trying to convince the suspect to pay him. This starts in just a couple of immediate examples with these characters that he plays. This extends to most of his relationship with Madison, along with his coworkers, including Jasper, played by Austin Emilio, who's a Linklater favorite. He was in Everybody Wants Some with Glenn Powell. He's great in this movie. That man needs more work. He's great. He's probably the other best part of this movie. He'll be trying to, Glenn Powell, Gary Johnson will be trying to like dupe one group and sneak by the other and say something to one person that really means something different, but he's wearing a wire, so he has to say it this way. It reminds me of like those Sopranos scenes when like Tony figures out that a character's wearing a wire and he's like not really talking around him because he knows like, I can't say how I really feel because then I would be caught and that would be bad. You get a lot of that in this movie. And that stuff I think is fun. But it also just leads to a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking. Yeah, it's a lot of talking, and it's a lot of doublespeak, and it's a lot of you sitting in your chair going, wait a second, what are they talking about now? Whose lie is who perpetuating here? Why does this character think this? And maybe that makes it worth watching twice, but personally, I think it makes it painful first time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it really moves too quickly in the beginning. Like, in the opening scene, he's like, oh, I teach philosophy at the local community college, and I'm a hitman. And then within the first 5 minutes, they're like, "Oh, our regular guy who plays the hitman isn't available. Gary, do you think you can do it?" And he's like, no." And then he goes in there and is like a different person, and is like perfectly suave and confident. Right. And I was like, this is a great setup. It would have been so much better to see him trying to progress into this role, like have him totally bumble it a couple of times and then kind of get better at it. And like I said, the premise is the much more interesting part, but again, they got to get to the premise too quickly, which is usually not the complaint I have. Usually I'm complaining about like the beach makes you old 45 minutes in. Yeah. It just moves so quickly. And then Adria Arjona's character is introduced in Act 2, and then their whole relationship is super rushed. It's just, it's a rough script. It's a great idea. It's a great premise. Poor script.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, pie in the sky. I guess I thought maybe it would be almost like a heist feature, and Gary would have to like play through these characters, maybe bounce between them, through maybe the climax of the film or something. But that's not really the focus. Really, it's a return to identity, right? Who is Gary Johnson really? Who is the man under all the characters? Which is about as delightful as you would expect from like a sub 2 hour rom-com on Netflix. It's weird. Like, I guess I feel like I see Richard Linklater on there and I think it's going to be something it isn't. Probably shouldn't look too heavy into it. But yeah, man, like my man's got a steam. This feels like it reminded me like one of those COVID films. Right? Like it reminded me of like a film you shoot during COVID when you only have like 5 sets and it's like all dialogue. God, they have like whole functional crimes in this film happening completely off screen and only told to you through dialogue. It's like baffling. Like you guys didn't even want to go shoot like a couple. You don't want to send a second unit director to get like a gun flashing for a scene or something. Like, no, we're just gonna have characters talk through it. Like, I think the comedy works in its better moments. Powell's great to look at. Man's easy on the eyes. No complaints there. But I don't know, man. I was uniquely disappointed by Hitman, and that's kind of a bummer. Any thoughts on it? I feel like I should probably start curbing my enthusiasm.
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Hitman?
I'm going to say hard pass on this. I did not enjoy this at all. It's a full 2 hours. Thought it was really boring. Could not stay off my phone. It starts promising. The premise is interesting. Someone being a fake hitman to get testimony out of suspects. That part is fun. The rom-com doesn't work. Their chemistry doesn't work. Glenn Powell is great. He always does have a lot of charisma on screen. He is fun, but it's just too long. It's boring. It's not even put on while you do laundry kind of thing. Just hard pass for me.
Yeah, I don't understand what exactly Linklater was going for here. Like, it reminds me of like looking at a Renaissance painting in an art gallery and be like, man, Monet really killed this. And then they're like, oh no, Monet had like assistants do this, dude. He didn't actually paint it. It's like, was he asleep at the wheel? Did he have somebody else making this movie? Like, it's too small for him. I expected something bigger. I expected something bolder. And Andy, you're right. Like, I don't know about the AstroTurf, but my God, I read people on Twitter being like, this is an Academy Award winning film. And then I'm watching, I'm like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Like, what am I missing here? Like, we review rom-coms on this show. I'm warm on Glenn Powell. I wanted to walk in liking this movie, but like, it just does not cut the mustard. Hitman's fine. Like, it's fine. That's what I think. I think my mom would watch it and then hit me after and be like, I can't believe that's how the movie ended. what the hell was going on in this thing. And that's how I feel. I'm like, I don't know. Like, did I miss something? Do I lack media literacy? Maybe I do. Maybe it's Maybelline. Anyway, we should talk about what we're watching next week on the show, Andy. What are we doing next?
Yes, we'll be back next week on the 25th with The Bike Riders, which is the new film from director Jeff Nichols, who did Midnight Special, Mud, Loving. Great director. Have you seen Midnight Special, by the way? It's an incredible
I did see it. Yeah, Michael Shannon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And that of course, stars, The Bike Riders stars Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, and Jodie Comer as people in this motorcycle gang in the Chicago area in the 1960s, based not on a book, but a bunch of photographs or like a photo album that a photography student took in the 60s of these motorcycle gangs and kind of recorded them, got to know them, and they crafted a narrative around these people. I listened to an interview with the director not long ago. This was supposed to come out in the fall, but because of the labor strikes, it got delayed to the summer. So we're really excited about that, The Bike Riders. And then we're going to be looking for TBA streaming. There's not too much out. So we'll let you know what we're watching. Some other things that are out this week, just FYI, The Exorcism, which is Russell Crowe's latest film, which last year he was in a movie called The Pope's Exorcist, and now he's in one called The Exorcism. So I don't know how he's in all these religious horror films, but he is. And upcoming the following week, we'll be looking at Kinds of Kindness, A Quiet Place Day 1, and just FYI, Horizon, an American Saga comes out on the 28th, which I think that's going to be a huge bomb.
I love that Russell Crowe is at the stage in his career where he will not change himself at all for a role. I think he
will only get worse.
Yeah, right. He'll just take the most expensive project, that like the thing he'll get paid the most for, where he does not have to change in the slightest. And I think the Exorcism looks like that on screen. Like, and then Pope's Exorcist, similar thing. He was just like, you know what? I really liked wearing those clothes in the last bit. If the fit's the same, I'll just do that next movie too. Like, that's fine. Pope's Exorcism looks fine. I'm sure it's fine. Horror heads will appreciate it at least till Quiet Place Day 1 comes around. And I'm stoked for Bike Riders. Who doesn't want to see Tom Hardy doing voices? I can't wait. If you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we're doing here on Off Script, you want to support us, maybe throw us a like or a comment or a rating or a review or a subscribe. All those things podcasts tell you to do. All those podcasters, go do one of those things. It means a lot. I really mean it. For me, being like, oh, just go participate. Like, engagement means a ton. It really does, and we really appreciate you guys being a part of it. If you're listening to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia, wherever you're at, go ahead and hit that subscribe button while you're here. Just pop on your phone screen and hit it real quick. Boop, boom, done. Right there, that is. You've done it. Congrats. And we'll be with you next week to talk about Bike Riders and probably something else. If you're watching on YouTube, big things going on YouTube. Hit that follow button, subscribe, like channel, comment, subscribe. You know, just share with us how you're feeling, I guess, in some capacity. And you can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com. You can email us correspondence directly at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. All these are social media junk, Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram. We're around, and you can find us for episode 257 next week when we're talking Bike Riders and a mystery film. So, from all of us at Off Script, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.